Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com. You can find cool stuff in stock every day, and check out our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. Check out our Altar Sleeves, support the show by using the code MAGICMICS at checkout for 5% off anything in the store. I am Evan Irwin. We get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl.
Hey guys, welcome back.
Ruben Bressler.
How's it going, everybody?
It's wonderful, because we got a brand new set, and it's sweet, and I like it, and we have very little overlap, as it turns out.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I mean, not very surprised, because we don't really know what's good in Standard. We don't know exactly what's going to be good in the older formats. But there's certainly some lightning rod cards that I was expecting more of us to share. But here we are.
Well,
I mixed my list up a little bit this time. I didn't just do like what was like the best cards to come out of it. I did like a couple of cards that I just like. And that I don't normally do. So that probably had a lot to do with like less overlap as well.
I did something similar to that. I have a couple of cards that I'm like, this is a card that I just like. This is a card that reminds me of my childhood. And oh, by the way, here's also a card that'll be great in every format. I did something similar.
A little something like that. Well, we begin with our choice of the top comment from last week, or I guess the week before that, in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent, letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 Planeswalkers on Arena. Ruben?
I think you're going to like this one in particular, Evan. Tony Giordano writes, y'all missed one of the most busted Planeswalkers ever to grace Arena, and who could blame you? Shortly after being introduced, it was banned in just about every Arena format. As Evan well knows, Oko Thief of Crowns was simply too good to stick around, especially in a format like Historic. He could come down on turn 2 with Land War Elves, make food, and turn your opponent's best thing into an elk. And they were both plus abilities. There was simply no reason to play anything other than Oko at the time. Soon every match was an Oko mirror, and simply he just had to go, alas, sweet Oko, we hardly knew ye.
Oko.
That's a good wrap up.
Yeah, Oko currently unplayable in literally any Arena format except Freeform Direct Challenge.
Yeah.
Came originally from Throne of Eldraine, a blue-green and generic mana for a 4 loyalty mythic legendary planeswalker. It has +2 to make a food token. That's all. Just went up to 6 loyalty with a 3
on a 3 mana planeswalker. Yeah.
+1. For God's sakes, +1. +1, target artifact or creature loses all abilities and becomes a green elk creature with base power and toughness 3/3 or -5. It doesn't matter, but -5, exchange control of target artifact or creature you control and target creature and opponent controls with power 3 or less. This nullified literally everything, and that plussed this thing. Like,
yeah, you needed to have haste, or you needed to cost less than 3 basically to do anything. The things that played well with this also helped support it. Gilded Goose, Wicked Wolf were super powered because of Oko. I remember in the early access streamer event, the first deck I tried to build was turn 1 Gilded Goose, turn 2 Oko. Before I realized what it did, like before I realized how ridiculous it was, and I was like, yeah, there's no one's ever doing anything except for this.
And no one did.
It was very, very good. And they tried to like sort of get rid of some pieces, but like, Eldraine was pretty good. Someone in that set really liked green.
Eldraine was busted. Eldraine was the first of the fire philosophy where everything should be exciting or interesting or whatever, and they went hog freaking wild. And this was just one of a myriad of cards from this set that were unbelievably overpowered and ridiculous and whatever. I still to this day do not understand why they don't have a changed, modified version on Arena. Plenty of other cards do. What are we waiting for?
They could make a 4 mana version like they did for Teferi Time Raveler.
Or a 5 mana version like they did for that one event. They literally made an alternate version of this, and it was fine. What are we doing? Anyway. All right, that said, we do appreciate Tony being a part of the show. Please contact us on social media, ideally Twitter DMs at MagicMicsCast for your prize. Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway, and stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate. because it's time to talk about our top 10 Dominaria United cards. This set is sweet, as we were discussing in the pre-show. I feel like a lot of the great formats, some of my favorite formats, often start with, I feel like I already like default know everything. Everything's clicking. I feel like, I'm the greatest drafter. And then you hit this period of like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm the worst drafter of all time. I'm clown shoes. I don't belong here. And then later you kind of figure out where you screwed up along the way. That's where I'm at.
I'm certainly in bottom of the barrel. I'm terrible right now. So hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
So far, I didn't come out of the gate fast, but I was fine, and I'm still kind of fine. I feel like I definitely haven't had enough like reps in with the set to know, but for the most part, my performance has been, slightly above average win rate, and that's it.
I feel like a lot of this to me comes down, like I'll see people be like, oh, I got 7 wins, or I went 7-2, and I look at their decks and I'll be like, I would never have built it the way that that deck looks. And that to me says I have so much more to learn, because I ain't there yet. But we do have our top 10. This set is sweet. And let's get started with our number 10. Ruben, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is a card that, I think it's pretty safe to say we'll see play in standard. This type of card, this casting cost, this power, this toughness, this school of Magic card traditionally sees play in standard. I can't really think of the last time that a 2/1 for a black mana that either comes into play tapped or can't block or whatever, but also is able to reanimate itself in some way, hasn't seen play in one deck or another. And Cult Conscript is actually one of the easier ones to get back into play in recent memories. Cult Conscript is a black mana for a 2/1 skeleton warrior. It's an uncommon who enters the battlefield tapped and has the following activated ability. Pay a generic and a black, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate only if a non-skeleton creature died under your control this turn. Obviously, this is intended to be played alongside your red-black or your white-black aristocrats draft kind of strategy. But that type of deck is super happy to have a Village Rites or a reckless abandon, some sort of way to take advantage of sacrificing your own creatures. And Cold Conscript, super cheap. You're able to do it at instant speed, and stuff dies all the time. And skeleton is not a very common creature type.
Yeah, I like that it is a little bit punishing, so that way they can't necessarily activate each other because they are so cheap. So you can't sort of get that bounce back and forth between them. But yeah, this is the type of card we see very often, and usually more aggressive strategies have better results in the beginning, just post rotation. So if this is going to see some play, this is the time.
Yeah, I mean, Oni Cult Anvil decks love this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to sacrifice all sorts of creatures that aren't skeletons. It lets you bring it back regardless of whether they're tokens or not tokens, which is great. I could definitely see a lot more restrictions being put on this in the past. And now it's just it's like a really sweet Black Savannah line that has a really fairly easy to trigger removal or return.
And if Priest of the Forgotten Gods were around with this card and you could just pay that 2 black mana to bring it back immediately, I would be so happy. But you can do that in Historic. Which is, man, that format's getting wild. Nerd Girl, what's your number 10?
So I do I have my first higher of 2 here at 10, but I will have a 9.
Okay, that's cool. We'll get that in there. So, my number 10 is, I don't know if economical is the right word. This is one of those cards that, I enjoy seeing new staples. I like when Wizards is we're setting bars here. This is a new, idea of thing. So Infernal Grasp, for example, is a good example where you're just wow, 2 mana, 2 life, kill anything. That's a whole thing. That's a new bar that has been set. Thoughtseize, for example. Again, same thing. 1 mana discard, 2 life. Okay, cool. Well, when you set bars with stuff like that, with stuff like Fatal Push, well, then you set a new bar with Cut Down. Cut Down is 1 black mana for an uncommon instant that destroys target creature with total power and toughness 5 or less. I like how this is nice and generic. It's not a Johnny's whatever, or, Karn so-and-so, or Phyrexian such and such. No, it's just Cut Down. It kills all the 3/2s in the format, which is super important, and I love it.
Yeah, super good card. Able to kill a wall of roots just as well as it's able to kill the coral 1/4 defender. Yeah, this card's really cool.
I like this card. It is a ton of value. I will say it is a frustrating one when it doesn't work. Now I'm glad it doesn't work because it's super cheap. It's instant speed, but like pump spells will get you. And also there's like some smaller, weaker creatures that you're used to being able to get because this type of card is usually 3 CMC or less or something like that. And it feels like you should be able to get some more things, but every once in a while, this just won't hit a thing I really want it to. And it's very frustrating.
It does feel real good in limited when my opponent taps out to play a 2/3 flyer. There's a bunch of 2/3 flyers in this format, and this thing takes care of all of them, which is really nice.
Yeah, I like the fact, I both understand and I also appreciate the fact that when you have cards like this and things like Lightning Bolt or Lightning Strike, everything with 4 toughness becomes, the premium, becomes the bar, right? So everything that's a 3/2 or better is like, well, doesn't get cut down. So, that's a thing you get to say now in standard for the next, I don't know, year or two. All right. Nerd Girl, what's number 9?
All right. So my number 9 is card. I feel like it should be a bit higher, but I haven't gotten to see it much. I haven't even seen it in limited. I did actually have it in one of my pre-release decks, but didn't get to play it. But I think it's going to be an absolute powerhouse in limited. And I'm very interested to see what comes of this in standard. And that is the Shivan Devastator. This is an X and red dragon Hydra, which is a sweet creature type with flying and haste. And when it enters the battlefield, it gets X +1/+1 counters on it. So this card is really, really tough to deal with. It can just kind of come out of nowhere and kill you.
I mean, it's the greatest wind drake of all time. It's like one of the best Hydras and wind drakes and hasty creatures, and it scales. Like, it checks so many boxes. It's wonderful.
Going through where the numbers are, 1/1 flying haste is Impetuous Sunchaser.
It's the new chick.
Well, that's 1/1 for 1. This is a 1/1 for 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Fair.
So that's okay. We also have Impetuous Sunchaser, not very impressive. 2/2 flying haste for 3, already pretty impressive, right? Like, we already played the Phoenix, Chandra's Phoenix at that casting cost. 3/3 flying haste for 4. I feel like we've had that before. Also quite good. 4/4 for 5. That's where most of our dragons live. Glorybringer, Stormbreath Dragon. And then once you go up from there, we've never had, I can't think of a 5/5 for 6 other than like Rorik's Blade Wing, much less 6/6 for 7, 7/7 for 8.
Right. It's
so
like Rorik's and that's it.
Yeah, the value that you get for this card is minimal, but the versatility, like this is a charm, right? This is, what do you want to play this early and start hitting for 2, or do you want to play this? Do you want to save it late and just fireball them for 10?
Yeah, it is a little bit weird for like your big mythic dragon to not be like able to recur. Like, you can bring it back to your hand, sure, but there's a lot of times in standard you want your big dragon to be able to come back out of the graveyard with cool mechanics. So it does prevent that from being a viable option in constructed, but I think it's a sweet card.
I think the raw versatility is really sweet. I think it's difficult as hell to design mythics that are this fun, exciting, have the exciting points. It's a $10 mythic, and appeal to all these different types of players. Like, the Spikes love it because it's competitive, but also the Johnnies can do stuff with varying types and counters. And of course, people who love dragons, it's an awesome dragon. So checks the boxes. I think that card is awesome.
I'm looking it up. I do not see a 5/5 for 6 that is just a 5/5 for 6 with haste. All the ones we've had are Inferno of Star Mounts. I mean, we've had hasty dragons for 6 mana, but we've never had anything quite as versatile as this.
There you go. Ruben, what's number 9?
My number 9 is a card that just makes me happy. And it makes me happy. I think that it makes me happy partially because of the way the mana looks on the card. And I want to explain what I mean by that. There's a couple cards in this set that have that are 1 color, and then their kickers are their 2 enemy colors. Previously, we had the Volvers, way long ago.
Way
Anavolver, Degavolver. This was before the shards. This was before the clans. This was before the triomes. And the way the mana costs look on this card make me feel like I'm like a small child again. I don't know how to explain it better than that. And also the ability of the card reminds me of a card that I've not played in a very long time named Old Man of the Sea. Partially because of the effect and partially because of the casting cost. And for all of those reasons, my number 9 is Vodalian Mindsinger.
Ooh.
Vodalian Mindsinger is a generic a blue and a blue for a 2/2 Merfolk wizard that has kicker of generic and a red and or generic and a green. It enters the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it for each time that it was kicked. And when it enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature with power less than Vodalian Mindsinger's power for as long as you control the Mindsinger. So 3 mana 2/2, steal your mana elf, steal your, your wall, whatever. 5 mana 4/4, steal your 3/3. That's pretty good.
Ooh.
Or 7 mana 6/6, steal your 5/5 flyer. Like these are pretty cool. That's a pretty cool split card.
I like the card in and of itself in that, like it played really well in sealed, for example. I had one of these in my sealed deck, which was awesome. I wish it were a little like maybe there was something you could do to give it hexproof or pay some mana or something, just a little bit something to guard it because it just kind of dies and you give it right back to them. And I'm like,
yeah, it dies pretty easy,
yeah.
but
or you bounce it.
It dies easy. It feels like a harder to cast. What was the one we had in the D&D set? The Mindslaver, like the 5 mana, just straight up
Mind
steal.
Flayer.
Mind Flayer. Like
Right.
this just feels like a worse version of a card that we're already seeing a fair amount of. And it's a lot easier to remove than a enchantment or something that we often get to steal creatures with.
Right.
So I love the art. I like that they're doing some stuff with Merfolk. And I think this is going to be a pretty cool card for, EDH because you want a ton of different things. So not everything needs to be the top of the line for whatever it is. But it is a little underwhelming given that the power creep has been so real.
Yep.
Yeah, if it had something like, if you kicked it, it got like a hexproof counter until it attacked or blocked or something, just a little something that would give it just a little bit of protection.
Right. If it had ward, I mean, there's not enough room on the card to have anything else.
You could throw a ward in there. Give me a ward too.
Sure.
Give me something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a cool card though. All right. So for my number 9 here, this is a card that I think is absolutely brilliant. I love it. It's already worth a couple bucks and rising. This is a card that's sweet in that it goes in literally every limited deck. Every single limited deck, you're going to just windmill slam this because it goes in all of them. It helps your domain. It's so good. It's like, it blows my mind how good Thran Portal is. Thran Portal is all the best parts of a fast land, except you say what the color is at the low price of a life. I don't care because I just fixed all my mana and it's great. Thran Portal is a rare land and it's also a gate, for God's sakes. It's a gate, okay? Good. We're checking boxes, all right? Thran Portal enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. So if it's the first 3 lands you play, it's entering the battlefield untapped.
First 2 lands you play. Oh no, you're right. First 3 lands you play.
First 3, yeah, first 3.
Oh wow!
As it enters the battlefield, choose a basic land type. Thran Portal is the chosen type. In addition to its other types and mana abilities of Thran Portal, cost an additional 1 life to activate. So,
slightly funny story about how sometimes people forget how not competitive the average player is. I was at PAX this past weekend, and I was sitting at a table. And the entire table, 7, close to 10 players around this group, someone opened that card and was like, what the heck is this? Why would you want to play this? And everybody's like, yeah, that just doesn't make any sense. It's not very good. Why would you want to hurt yourself? And it was cute and sort of endearing that
first pain land. You're just
right. Yeah. I remember when I learned that life totals were a resource too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, it's tough to remember sometimes that sometimes people, their closest experience to Magic is a sealed pool once every 6 months or something. And it's adorable. And I like that there are cards for different people. And this is certainly definitely appealing to the more competitive side of things.
And this to me sounds like why they push so hard on putting goaded as part of one of the main mechanics they use in Commander now, because it makes people attack. One of the number one things you see with new players is they just don't want to attack.
Yep.
They just don't want to risk it, even if it's obvious, even if there's no bad blocks or whatever. Like they just don't want to. I think that's really interesting.
That's why the Monarch and Goad and why Raid made a comeback. All of those attacker stuff. But as for Thran Portal, the most exciting part for me is that it's a gate. Honestly, like if we can, it's flavor without flavor text.
Yeah.
Because it's another card that can't fit flavor text. It's got 4 lines of text on its land. So.
It's a lot. It's a lot. But there's no downside, basically, and that's what I love about it.
Yep.
So let's move here to number 8. Ruben, what's number 8?
My number 8 should come as no surprise to anybody. This is a 1-mana creature with Defender. You all know how much I love my 1-mana creatures with Defender, because they trigger Arcades, and that's all I care about in my life. This one also lets your other defenders attack, which is very exciting. My number 8 is Walking Bulwark. Fun. Walking Bulwark is a generic mana for an 0/3 artifact creature golem with Defender that has an activated ability. 2 generic until end of turn. Target creature with Defender gains haste, can attack as though it didn't have Defender, and assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Activate only as a sorcery.
Woof.
I've definitely played this on turn 1 and then just attacked on turn 2 with this. And like attacking on turn 2 with 3 power is not nothing.
I want to find someone who looks at me the way that Ruben looks at a 1-mana defender.
It's the dreamiest. When I was in the red zone and I was playing,
I love him so much. He does it. He protect, but he also attack. That's all I want out of my card.
And he's got your defenders back. That's right.
Yeah.
Because he's ready to come and get you. That's awesome. It's a cool card. Like I like the defender deck. We were talking about this in the pre-show as well. It's a super powerful deck. Really kind of difficult to nail down. You can't be two defender decks at the table. It's just the one person hoping they're getting it right. So
yeah, this card is not particularly good in the defender deck in limited.
Is it not really?
It's well, the problem is that the common defenders, so the good one is the 3-mana blue 0/5,
right?
Because attacking with a 5/5 is great, but you've got like a 3-mana 2/4 in black that's common.
The uncommon Blight Pile is a 3/3.
The Blight Pile is already a 3/3. The uncommon blue one has an activated ability, so you don't want to put it into danger. And then the rest of them are 3 toughness. So
the bigger thing is that it's giving you a secondary payoff. Like, you know what I mean? So you have your uncommon payoffs, and then you have this other thing that makes your other dirtily defenders that have already ETB'd and done a trigger. It lets you still do the thing. So like, even if they find an answer for your white or blue defender payoff, it's like, okay, well, I can still get you because I can possibly attack. And this will still trigger all those things. So I do like it in the deck.
I love the fact that it's been since Rise of the Eldrazi since we've had Defender Tribal, and I low-key love it.
We did also have it in Iconic Masters, to be fair.
That's fair. Yeah. Didn't draft a lot of that, unfortunately. Yeah. So, Nerd Girl, what's number 8?
So my number 8 is sort of a honorary slot because I love it so much. Most of you guys, I love Two-Headed Giant. I'm usually the competitive player. I don't play a lot of Commander. I don't play a lot of casual Magic, but for some reason, 2HG is just the light of my life. It's the best Magic I will ever play. At every convention, I want to play 2HG at least once per day. And it's my favorite. And you know what makes me very, very happy in 2HG? When you cast a spell and you say what it does, and your opponents are like, oh, wait, what? And then like they don't understand because the card doesn't necessarily intuitively do what you think it does. And that's what we get with Miria's Outrider.
Ooh.
This 5-mana elf archer with reach is a 4/4 with domain. Deal damage to each opponent for the number of basics that you control. So we got to cast this and go 10 you again, return it from the graveyard, 10 you again.
Yeah. And
just like kill someone. I also had a domain deck with 3 of these at the top end with a bunch of the Death Bloom Gardeners and just cast them on 4 with domain 5 every time and just do like Lava Axe you, Lava Axe you, Lava Axe you while putting up a wall of 4/4s. This card is fantastic and it's so amazing. And I love Tenning my
Card's
opponent
absurd.
for no reason.
Card's sick.
I have lost to this card in limited a lot. Certainly has the why does this card have reach award for the set. I get that it's an elf and an archer, but it does not look like it should have reach. It does not behave like it should have reach.
Outriders don't normally have reach. Don't make any much sense.
It's also it's standing in the middle of like on top of a beast that it's riding.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've definitely run my 2/2s into this thing thinking that it didn't have reach. This thing is insane. This thing always lava axes. It's a 4/4. I lose to this card constantly.
Like this card is, we spoke about a little bit of that. It's the Dirkwood Boars that domes you for 5. Could be good enough. I would not be surprised to see it. I one of a 2 of maybe these things are in sideboards or something, but definitely in limited. This thing is nuts. It deals 4 to 5 damage basically every single time, and taking out 20 to 25% of your life total is no freaking joke. And damn, that card is sweet.
33% of your life in 2HG.
Exactly.
Ooh,
in
crazy.
Vegas,
Crazy.
I want to play a 2HG game or event with you.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So for my number 8 here, this was a card that I don't know if it sort of crept up per se, but let me tell you, the more I've played both with it and against it, I've given nothing but more and more respect for it. It's a card that like just sneaks up because it just affects kind of everything. And when one card can like just affect almost everything that's going on in the game, it becomes a lot more interesting because all of a sudden they do something crazy. They do a Planeswalker so-and-so. They play a Meat Hook Massacre or whatever. And then you're like, no. Urtai says no. Urtai says no. Urtai says no. You can have a card. You can have a card. But you cannot get your Planeswalker Ultimate. You cannot get your whatever, spell you want to play. Oh, it killed your best creature because I don't like it anymore. Giving them a 33% chance to just draw a land instead of whatever you just stopped is big game. And this card is super sweet. Urtai Resurrected is a black, blue, and 2 generic mana for a 3/2 rare legendary Phyrexian human wizard with flash. And when it enters the battlefield, you choose up to 1. Counter target spell activated ability or triggered ability. Its controller draws a card or destroy another target creature or planeswalker. Yes, please. Its controller draws a card. No Lily for you. Draw a card. I don't care. You don't get Lily no more. Like I'm telling you, this thing is sick. I have messed up people's entire days with just like they get everything in place and they do so and so, and you airtie and game's over. Like they just go and they discombobulate.
It's flexible in that it also removes it once it's on the board. It can counter it and prevent it from going onto the board, but it can also just deal with it after the fact, which kind of helps with some of the issues that we have with counter spells, especially in limited, where it's like sometimes they're too late. Sometimes you didn't, tempo your cards correctly. But the other really cool thing is, even though people are like, well, I'd rather have a counter because I don't want them to draw a card, but you're getting a body. So that sort of mitigates a little bit of that damage. But the tempo swing is the biggest part of this for me, because not only are you countering their big play where they tapped out to do the thing, you are then still getting a body that can swing on the crackback, and you've eaten up their entire turn. So it feels really, really strong to me in comparison to a normal counter spell.
Yeah. This is the best version of this style of card that we've had since Venser, Shaper Savant.
Yeah.
We've had, I think Overwhelmed Amalgam was trying to do something like this. There are a couple of creatures, 4-mana creatures that are able to respond to spells, basically. Urtai is the best that we've seen in a very long time. The card is upsetting, but also, like Thoughtnauts here gave them a card when they got rid of it. Like, this is not dissimilar to Venser. This is not dissimilar to Remand, right? Like, this is just a tempo play. And if they're tapping out to play a 5-mana Planeswalker or trying to stabilize the board with a huge spell, not only are you preventing them from doing so, you're also adding to your board presence. Very good card.
Yeah, if I could kick Remand and they had to discard the spell and I got a 3/2 out of it and they drew whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
Because again, 33% chance they draw a land instead of the super cool thing they were doing. You're just like, nope, no thanks. Card is sick. All right, cool. Let's move here to number 7. Ruben, what you got?
So my number 7 is a 7-mana card. And when I pay 7 mana, I want it to win me the game.
Okay.
Like, if I'm investing 7 mana, I better get my money's worth. And this card gives me my money's worth and then some at 7 mana. But the other thing I would like out of my 7 mana cards is to do something if I don't have 7 mana. And this card does. This card actually lets you use it early without necessarily having to just wait for 45 minutes to have the opportunity to cast it. And that card is Herd Migration.
Mm-hmm.
Herd Migration is 6 generic and a green for a rare sorcery with Domain. Make a 3/3 beast creature token for each basic land among types you control. It also has pay a generic, a green, and discard it to search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle, and you gain 3 life. That's Revitalize, which was a standard playable card. 2 mana, draw a card, gain 3 life. Not only is this draw a card, this is basic land cycling, gain 3 life. And oh, by the way, late in the game, make 5 3/3s, put 15 power on the board is plenty good enough. This is one of, if not the best payoff for the Domain deck in Limited. I would not be surprised if this saw play in Constructed in some form or fashion. It doesn't like stand out to me as, oh, this thing is the most busted rare I've ever seen, right? But it plays so well.
My win rate against this in Limited is pretty abysmal. 3 3/3s is tough to deal with, and 5 is impossible because they can just throw them away all willy-nilly. And I mean, the format's not super wide or super tall, so they're a lot harder to deal with than you might imagine. And also, Domain is very heavily supported in the format in that the draft pod can support more than one person. Mm-hmm. So if you have this, you've got the Domain to back it up. It's really not hard to get.
I mean, everybody has a little bit of Domain. I mean, there's the lands just left, right, and center. It doesn't really matter. For me, the lands, I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, but the lands, basically having any of the colors that you're playing could just be into the battlefield tap mountains, into the battlefield tap plains. Like, who cares? Mm-hmm. But Herd Migration, I've been building around this card in Standard. Check out my Twitter if you want to see some deck lists, or the Magic Mike's Discord, which you can be a part of as part of the Patreon. But check out Herd Migration decks because I think they're awesome. This thing both enables itself and is just a giant payoff. Is super cool. It fixes everything. It gives all the payoffs to your Domain cards. Like, I love this thing so much. It's super sweet. 7 mana for 15 power. Let's go. Yeah. Card is dope.
I also got to double this once with the blue-red, the Storm Runner.
You had the casual 9-10 mana.
I had 9 mana. Yes. I had 9 mana, and then made 10 3/3s.
So you could do it with the Storm Runner or the Twin Inferno, right?
Yes. Could also do it with Twin Inferno.
Yep, that's true. Nerd Girl, what's number 7?
My number 7 is a pretty sweet card. I did get to play it in Limited, and I'd be interested to see what it's going to do possibly in Standard, because what is better than card advantage? Card advantage stapled onto a game-winning bomb that also protects itself. We've got Sphinx of Clear Skies, 3 mana blue for a Sphinx with flying and ward 2. It's a 5/5 that says when Sphinx of Cleared Skies deals combat damage to a player, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one of the piles into your hand and the other into the graveyard. That is insane. It's absolutely nutty. It gives you so much card advantage, and it protects itself, unlike the blue dragon from the D&D that, like, as soon as it becomes tapped or deals combat damage, it no longer does the thing. It's going to be tough to deal with this on turn 5, especially with ward 2.
Oh yeah.
If they had not reprinted Liliana of the Veil, I know this because I played with this card would be way better. Like, it's still good. Don't get me wrong. It's sweet. It's awesome. I love Factor Fictioning when I hit somebody in the face. It's awesome. Yeah. But I'll be damned if Liliana didn't catch me with this card a lot.
Yeah, but this is Dragonlord Ojutai. This is Imarith, the Desert's Doom. 5 mana, 5/5 flying ward 2 is good enough to see play even without dealing damage. If it hits your opponent, you draw a card. Like, if you're playing mono blue, this card's good enough. The fact that you get to Factor Fiction based on your lands, and even if you only have 3 land types, you're getting 2 cards. If you have all 5, you can get up to 3, maybe 4 cards. Not to mention the fact that the rest of the cards go into your graveyard, and there's lots of interesting ways to use graveyard effects in this set. This card is absolutely spectacular. I'm sad that I haven't gotten to draft one of these yet, because, as you know, I'm a huge fan of Domain and Dirtling, and this is everything I want to be doing with my time.
Well, I love it. Don't get me wrong. I wish it was even better than it already is. that said here, my number 7 is a interesting card that when was initially spoiled, I'm like, my God, it does everything. And then someone was like, it doesn't do blah, 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 or it doesn't do so and so. And I'm like, y'all are so spoiled. Magic players are so spoiled these days. It is ridiculous. And you cannot have a land with not 1, 2, or 3. The thing's got 4 abilities. For Plaza of Heroes, this thing has no downside whatsoever. Literally, it's all upside. We're to the moon, y'all. Plaza of Heroes is a rare land, currently $9 plus-ish. It taps for a colorless mana. It taps to add 1 mana of any color. You spend this mana only to cast a legendary spell, which means all your legends, all your planeswalkers. Taps to add 1 mana of any color among legendary permanents you control because that was necessary. And 3 generic mana, tap, exile it. Target legendary creature gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Mother of God, why does this card not do? It does not make you Julienne Fries. That's where it ends, right there.
There is a red-white historic deck in Modern. They say it has historic effects, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like a Mox Amber deck, and you want to play a bunch of 1 mana legends in it. And so you've got Zurgo, Bellstriker, Isamaru, Ragavan, things like that. This card goes right in that deck. This card is exactly what that deck wanted and needed. And then you just play like Urza's Ruinous Blast on turn 4 with your Mox Ambers, and you go to town. This card's going to be spectacular, and it's $9 because it also goes in every commander deck.
Every commander deck ever. Every single one. Ever. Like.
Yeah, unique lands that are being printed. I feel like lands are tough to do, right? There's only so many combinations of things that our lands can have. And this is the perfect set for it as well, because I believe there's like 46 legendary.
I think it's 41 legends.
Creatures. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's this just, again, I'm like, man, like when you make rare lands that can go in literally any commander deck ever, they're going to be worth $1 million. They just are. And there's no downside whatsoever to this thing. It doesn't enter the battlefield tapped. Like it just does everything. Kills me. All right, let's move here to number 6. Ruben, what you got?
So my number 6 is a dude that I love. This is just, I can't tell if I'm bad at this format. All right. I feel like I'm bad, but every time I cast this card, I feel like the biggest man. I feel like I can never lose if this card resolves. I tend to draft the Dirtly Domain decks, right? And I tend to have my Dirtly Domain creature that I play on turn 5 die, because that's just how it goes, right? I play my Territorial Morrow and it gets killed, or I play, whatever legend I picked, my Storm Runner or whatever, and it dies. But the good news is that on turn 6, I can play a land and I can play Bortuk Bone Rattle and put it right back into play. Bortuk Bone Rattle is 4 generic black-green for a 4/4 Troll Shaman with Domain. When Bortuk Bone Rattle enters the battlefield, if you cast it, choose target creature card in your graveyard, return that card to the battlefield if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of basic lands among types you control. Otherwise, put it into your hand. This card is just value. It's a 4/4, so it's like a reasonable body, and it brings something back with it all the time.
So during my set review for this card, I was just like, it's fine because the domain, but like your domain isn't going to always work. Like you might not have it, and even if you do have it, you can only get like a 4 CMC or a 5 CMC. And then I thought about it for like 10 more seconds, reread it one more time, and I was like, wait a minute, do I care? No, this card is awesome. And like it did take just that shift of like realizing it didn't matter if it came back onto the battlefield for this to be insanely good value. And I was just happy with it as is. And sometimes that's just your best, your best thing in your yard is a 4 powered creature, 4 CMC creature. And then it's great.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also happy with a 4/4 Gravedigger. Yeah. Like Limited's it's a simple world, folks. You get your best thing back from your graveyard. It doesn't matter if it goes to play or in your hand.
Yeah,
Yep.
like if you play this and you get a Battle Wing Mystic or whatever back, awesome. You know what I mean? Like that okay, like that's sweet. We got all that power, all that toughness, 2 bodies just like that. Free value is, well, feels like free value. Nerd Girl, what's number 6?
So my number 6 is probably the one card on my list that probably shouldn't be there. Like it's probably not as strong and limited. It's not going to see constructed play, but it's the archetype that's near and dear to my heart. I haven't gotten to play it. I have been trounced by it. And it's the kind of deck build I want and the type of card I want to be good in, both in standard and in limited. So we're going to talk about Aaron Benalia's Ruin.
Ooh.
White, black for a Phyrexian human. That's a 3/3 with Menace that says for a white and a black, you can tap, sacrifice another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. This, I feel like it's a little bit of a miss to not be a Phyrexian cleric, because that would be pretty sweet, but maybe too overpowered. I don't know. But this is really, really good with the white go wide token strategy that exists in limited. There are several creatures and cards that put in multiple bodies. This is not at sorcery speed. It's very powerful, and it only takes 1 or 2 sacrifices for this to just get absolutely out of hand.
Yeah, this is Aaron Benalia's Ruin. He's just hanging out being awesome.
Well, he is the father of Raph and Danatha, right? Mm-hmm. So, and Aaron has been, or Aaron, whatever, has been a central figure in the lore
and then they
since before those characters. I think that Gerard there was some reference in very old lore to Aaron Capuchin. But in any case, this is exactly the top end kind of middle card you want in that aristocrats deck. Take advantage of sacrifice, grow up the rest of your team, turn your 1/1s into 2/2s. This thing's very good.
Yeah, I mean, this is the perfect thing with that Cavalier, the 2/1 in list that comes with a 1/1. This is a Captain's Call, goes right in this type of deck. I've drafted this this guy multiple times. Absolutely terrific. I mean, usually 1 activation will get them to likely scoop, and 2 activations is generally over. Like, because at that point you're just overwhelming them.
Yeah,
it's a fantastic Magic card.
Yeah, I'm terrified of this card.
It's very, very scary. Speaking of cards that are very scary and yet wonderful, that I like, Wizards over time has tried to bring the battle cruiser-esque feel to creatures. And originally they did this with the level up mechanic, which was cool. And I think if I'm getting my sets in the right order, they originally did this with Figure of Destiny. The Figure of Destiny was the first thing. It was X. It started out as a little guy, and you made it bigger with more and more mana and so on and so on. And they did that recently with the Ascendant Spirit for the Snowlands. And again, you had to spend like 4 or 5 mana there on the top end to do the big cool thing. Well, they crunched it down one more time. And this is the greatest Figure of Destiny they have ever made. This thing is already in constructed. It is absolutely fantastic. Mono black rules again, partially because Evolved Sleeper exists. Evolved Sleeper is 1 black mana for a 1/1 rare human. For 1 black, it becomes a human cleric with base power and toughness 2/2. For a black and a generic mana, if it is a cleric, you put a death touch counter on it, and it's a Phyrexian human cleric with base power and toughness 3/3. And for 2 black and a generic mana, if it's a Phyrexian, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, then you draw a card and you lose a life. It's amazing every stage of the game that you play it and you get it. It's awesome in multiples. I absolutely love this card to death. It is fantastic.
I like that the final trigger is not a one-time deal.
Oh, yeah.
Like it gives you that recurring infinite value, which even if it doesn't, if you're not ahead, it'll slowly but surely get you there if it's not dealt with. And I think that's a pretty cool build.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen Figure of Destinies before. I think that there was something called like Warden of the Sixth Tree that was in Fate Reforged, I believe, that was quite good. Obviously, the best Figure of Destiny of all time is Student of Warfare.
Which was good.
This is close. This is quite good. And as Nerd Girl mentioned, this is the first one where you want to keep activating it at the top end. I mean, the Ascendant Spirit gets you an additional trigger when you hit your opponent with it. But it doesn't really, it doesn't pay you off as much as Evolved Sleeper does. And the other thing about Evolved Sleeper is it tells a story. It's evocative. And I really love the way that the tale of how sleepers exist within the Phyrexian network work here with this card.
They just creep on in. Warden of the First Tree was a Fate Reforged
First Tree.
mythic. Yes, it was very similar. And again, Wizards, I think, does recognize and has always recognized, as far as I can recall, that the ultimate thing can be activated over and over again and will keep giving you benefits and bonuses for doing so, which is great. So let's move on here to our top 5. Ruben, what's your number 5? Let's move on here to number 5. Ruben, what's your number 5?
If this card's in a pack, I'm picking it first, and I'm planning to 4-3 the draft. That just is the life I live. This is the decision I've made. This is my favorite uncommon to pick in the set. If this card's in my deck, I'm happy. I always lose, but it makes me excited to play the deck. And that card is Niall Avizoa Aeronaut.
Oof.
Niall Avizoa Aeronaut. Avizoa is a 2 generic green-blue 2/4 flying elf scout legendary creature, and it is an uncommon with domain. Whenever Niall Avizoa Aeronaut deals combat damage to a player, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. Put one of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom in a random order. Then, if there are 5 basic lands among types you control, draw a card. Card's great. I love this card.
Why do you think it's going to lose? This card is great.
Card's amazing. I just go 4-3 every time I have this card in my deck.
I'm right there with you. I have this card in my deck. It's almost guaranteed a 4-3 at best. At best.
Because I'm also playing this with 8, dual lands, and I never have the right mix of lands. I've figured out how to not completely lose, which is I have to draft only blue and green cards with my dual lands so that my basic lands can actually cast my spells. My geothermal crevices and whatever are just there to give me domain. If I'm able to play this on turn 4, though, I'm so happy.
Yeah, my domain decks have been like a 2 or 3 color base, with the only other things that want the other colors are like the kicker costs and the slightly random, maybe 1 of card. Mm-hmm. So I think this is perfectly fine. I had my best domain deck so far was just 2 colors splash black, and then I had plenty of lands for all the other ones, and I was still pretty consistently domain 5.
Yeah. This would be my number 1 candidate for card that always does nothing for me and I get beat with just all the time. I
would say that about Aaron, which was the card that was on your list. Mm-hmm. It does nothing for me. I can never cast it because I've always got 2 swamps and a plains instead of the other way around. But this card, this card's been great, and I play it. I play this, and then I play Joda's Codex, and I'm drawing 3 cards a turn, and I'm still losing because my opponent's cards do things, and my cards only draw more cards.
And you're dirtling, and it's cool, but I swear to God, they'll get it on turn 4 on the play. They'll have domain 3. They'll hit me with it 3 times. They've smoothed out their entire draws forever, and I can't stop it. And lose.
The card's spectacular.
Card is sweet. Nerd Girl, what's number 5?
My number 5 is, I only wanted to pick one of these. I think there is more than one that will be relevant in constructed gameplay, but I wanted to pick the one that I was kind of the most excited about, even though not for me personally, but I feel like the elf community is very strong. And whenever they get a piece, I'm very happy for them. So we're going to talk about Leaf Crowned Visionary. Oof. This is a green for a 1/1 elf druid. This is other elves get +1/+1. And whenever you cast an elf spell, you may pay 1. And if you do, draw a card. There's some talk of this seeing Legacy Elves gameplay, and it's an exciting day.
Card is bananas.
There's not just talk of it. There is a Fire Shoes tweet that this trophied a Legacy League for a 3 of. Nice. 4 of.
Good.
Wow.
Yeah.
I played this in my historic deck. I took out the Eldraine card that you could pay X mana when another creature or a token comes into play, and put whatever, who cares? This thing is where it's at, because now you're drawing cards as well as playing all the spells. If you're playing historic, you can play that sweet historic only Planeswalker, which is nuts, Freyalise, which is insane. This card is bananas. I'm glad it's on y'all's list for real.
Absolutely. This card and the Goblin are the 2 that I expect to see Legacy play. The Merfolk will probably see Modern play. The Cleric and the Soldier are also very good. The fact that we got an entire cycle of 2-mana lords is crazy.
It's insane. And if rumors and things people find in the trash are true, the soldier guy is going to get a lot better with the upcoming set. So we'll see.
Okay, well,
we will see.
You heard it here second.
There you go. Well, I'll tell you what, for my number 5 here, this is a card that it wasn't really on my radar. And then I saw it work. And when I saw it work, it was just the clouds parted, the sun came in, and it was like, do you understand how nuts this card is? And I was like, I was not aware of exactly what my life was missing. And it turns out all it was Zur the Eternal Schemer. Because Zur the Eternal Schemer is bananas. This ability that it has doesn't go away. When you turn an enchantment into a creature, it's going to be there forever. And it's not only that. Let's get into the card, shall we? This thing's nuts. This thing's absolutely nuts. It's a black, blue, and a white mana. That's it. 3 mana for a mythic 1/4 legendary human wizard. That's flying. And enchantment creatures you control, those things, have Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof, which means this has to die before your giant 6/6 Leyline gets to die. So for a white and generic mana, target non-aura enchantment. This can be the Wedded Announcement. This can be Meathook Massacre. This can be the new Leyline for 6 mana. The target non-aura enchantment you control becomes a creature in addition to its other types and has base power and base toughness, each equal to its mana value. Again, forever. Now, while he's out, it has Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof. That's awesome. But if it's not out, it's still a creature.
It's still a crazy creature. Yeah.
I cannot properly express to you how nuts this card can get, because it can get absolutely nuts. The Lifelink in particular just knocks it over the moon.
There's a lot of white enchantment removal in this set. There's not just Leyline and Temporary Lockdown, which are the two, I think they're both rare. There's also Prayer of Binding, Citizen's Arrest, and another one. I'm pretty sure there's a 5th one.
I think that was the 4, but either
was
way,
it just the 4? Either way, that's still a lot. That's a common and uncommon and 2 rares, which is just an absolutely ridiculous amount of things to be able to turn on with this card. I also love how crazy he looks. I know that's a secondary thing, but the look on his face, he's just a little guy and he's having so much fun and it's great.
Yeah, the problem for me is that in limited, I don't necessarily want to turn those things into creatures, because I like them continuing to remove my opponent's creatures. So I do think this is an interesting card for constructed gameplay, and I'm excited to see what it does for that. But for limited, I'm definitely playing it if I'm in those colors, because it's just a flying thing at rate. And there are some other options, but it's definitely an interesting build for a card.
Right, but do note that when Leyline Binding becomes a creature, it still has the thing exiled. The thing doesn't go anywhere.
But it's easier to kill a creature.
But not the Citizen Arrest.
Yes,
oh no, Citizen's Arrest is an O-ring as well.
Yes.
What's the one that goes on? Is there one that goes on the creature this set?
I don't think so.
Oh, they're all just O-ring effects.
They're all just O-rings.
Yeah, there's no pacifisms in the set. And so that in particular, just again, when Leyline Binding,
I take it back.
Yeah, Leyline Binding becomes a 6/6 Lifelink, Death Touch, Hexproof.
Yeah, that's obviously that's an outlier and shouldn't be counted in the data.
Not in limited. I'm talking constructed, y'all.
No, I understand.
It's just It's
in limited, for some reason, I was thinking most of these effects were pacifisms, which is significantly worse. But yeah, if they're O-ring effects, then that's interesting. It does mean that if they do kill this, they can then easily kill your O-rings easier than they could have if it was stayed in enchantment, because main deck enchantment removal is not as cool, but they have to eat this thing first and they're probably dead by that time. So
Right. And a lot of times, and because I've played with this card and played with this deck, a lot of times that lifelink is 1000% crucial. They will get you down while you're playing your tap lands and whatever, dirtling. And when you finally are able to play the Zur, activate the Leyline, smack for 6, gain 6, that's just a huge turn in the game, which is awesome. That said, let's move here to number 4. Ruben, what you got?
One of my least proud moments in the history of Magic Mike's was a failed pie bet that I had, in which I predicted that a certain planeswalker would be good. Now, I'm much more confident that this one that I'm about to talk about will be good, because in the history of Magic, I don't think that we've had a planeswalker with 4 loyalty abilities that wasn't played. And I think that that Magic realized that they needed to send this character off, RIP to a real one, in the correct way, and that of course is Jaya, Fiery Negotiator. Jaya, Fiery Negotiator is a 4 mana, 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker Jaya with 4 abilities. +1, make a 1/1 red monk creature token with prowess. -1, exile the top 2 cards of your libraries, choose one of them, and you can play that card this turn. -2, choose target creature an opponent controls. Whenever you attack this turn, Jaya, Fiery Negotiator deals damage equal to the number of attacking creatures to that creature. And -8, you get an emblem with, quote, when you cast a red instant or sorcery spell, copy it twice. You may choose new targets for the copy.
This card is very good.
Planeswalkers doing Planeswalker things.
Yeah, this card is just, I got to play this in a constructed deck. There was a green-red aggro deck that someone had played in an event recently. Super duper powerful. People forget prowess is prowessing until it prowesses. Like, it's just ridiculous. And that's super cool. -2, target creature equal to the number of attacking creatures. Really interesting way of protecting itself and also being aggressive, which is very Jaya, which I think is also great. This card this to me is almost the like sleeper hit right now. No one's really talking about it. Not a lot of decks with it. That one deck I found with it, I was like, oh, let's go. I want to play Jaya. And she was awesome.
I will say my favorite thing that has come out of this card being printed is the meme emote. I'm just saying,
yes,
like that is kind of a huge home run. Whoever,
of
awesome.
of the pointing lady grumping at a Johnny. Yeah, that's amazing.
Nerd Girl, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is my second and only other higher.
Ooh, all right. Well, that's fine. That's cool. I can talk about my number 4. This was the card that blew me away the most in the preview event. This is the card that I could not get my head around. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on the stream trying to build the deck, but I also recognized when you put together the Sliver Queen and you put together the first Sliver and you make them the same damn card, Mother of God, Joda the Unifier is ridiculous. This card is one of those things, like, I think it's not seen a ton of sort of play and spotlight because it requires so many rares and mythics to make this deck work. Mother of God, it's a 5 mana Wooburg 5/5 mythic legendary human wizard. Legendary creatures you control get +X/+X, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control, which means it counts itself, which means it's a 6/6 kinda in disguise. Whenever you cast a legendary spell from your hand, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a legendary non-land card with lesser mana value, also known as Cascade for Legends. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This thing is crazy. If you have a 2 mana legend, a 3 mana legend, and you just power this out, game is generally over. I won one of the games because Shivan Devastator is an awesome mythic that does awesome things, but most of the time Joda just cascades into absolute silliness and you lose.
Yeah. It's a 5 mana 6/6 that pumps the rest of your team. Not the rest, but many members of your team.
Right.
And if you get to untap with it, you get to cascade every legendary spell you play for the rest of the game, which is huge card advantage. I mean, this card's very good.
It's interesting that like a lot of times the 5-color cards are kind of memey and not super good and limited anyway. But in the set where the 5-color deck is a real thing, and it's actually possible to cast this, it is quite good.
Yeah.
It is that man. I was not prepared for what was going on with this card.
Another thing I appreciate about this Joda is that it is a 5-color commander that is not a good stuff commander. You don't want to just jam this as your commander in every 5-color deck. You want to have this as a specific type of commander build around, which I really appreciate.
I think that's cool. All right, let's move over to our top 3. Nerd Girl, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is, I don't think we've covered any of this cycle yet so far, which is kind of surprising, but I wanted to go ahead and cover at least one of them. And I picked my favorite that kind of goes with my sort of preferred play style and what I think is the best one in limited. it's pretty close, but I think that this is going to be the one that will have the highest win rate. So we're going to talk about the Defiler of Vigor. This is a 3 green for a Phyrexian worm. It has trample as a 6/6. It makes green spells cost up to 1 less if you're willing to pay a Phyrexian mana for it. And whenever you cast a green permanent spell, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. This thing is massive at only 5 mana for a limited game. And if you cannot answer this, game over. You only need 1 or 2 triggers on this for the game to get absolutely out of control.
Yeah, I beat this card unlimited one time.
I've never beat this card unlimited.
One time.
Card's huge, right? 6 toughness means it survives Jaya's twin tornado, Inferno,
Twin
whatever.
Inferno,
There's another thing that this survives that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But I mean, 6/6 for 5 trample, already insane. The fact that it pumps your team is crazy. I mean, I really like drawing a card off the blue one. You know, giving menace is cool, pinging is cool, making a 1/1 is cool, but fully pumping your team, or on Ray for the Vastwooding your team every time you play a elf is unbelievable.
Yeah, this is, first of all, I'm a little shocked this isn't mythic, quite frankly, but secondly, this is another one of those kind of those sort of tests of like, how good could we make a 5 mana green creature? Like, could we make it a 5/5 or could we make it a 6/6? Can we give it trample? Or can we get this other ability? Let's put a counter, like, let's pump the whole team. How about if we didn't just pump the whole team? What if we gave them counters on the whole team? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, let's just keep going to how sick and insane our 5 mana green creatures can be, because this thing is bananas.
I am
one of the other things that makes me put this at a higher rate than the blue one, because the blue one has a fantastic ability as well,
sure,
but the blue one dies to so much of the red removal. And also your blue deck tends to be a little slower out of the gate anyway. So when you stabilize, you kind of need something that can actually get on the board and stick. And that one is just a lot less likely to, especially in limited. There are very few things in the format that can answer this.
Yeah, you want to like bounce it or something, that Rona's something or other that bounces, it puts on the bottom. Like,
it's tough. There's like there's a black instant, but it costs 4 mana. I mean, and you can also trigger this the turn you play it. Like, there are at least 2. I think there's at least one 1-mana 1/1 in green that can let you, that you can trigger this immediately.
Yeah, Llanowar Stalker. So this is a card that just it's very scary. It was made to be scary, and they did it. I'm scared to death of this damn card. Well, speaking of scary things that are cool and scary, of all the cards in the whole set, of all the numbers of all the top 10s, Ruben and I have the exact same number 3. So Ruben, tell us about our number 3, and I'll tell the card. Or I'll say what the card is.
So in order to tell you about our number 3, I want to give a history lesson. Tuck in, kids. It's time for Old Man Ruben to tell you about Old Man Magic. Way back during the Brothers' War, which we will revisit in some capacity later this year, the brothers Urza and Mishra were having a all-out war on the plane of Dominaria. And in order to put an end to this war, Urza used a weapon that he found and sort of repurposed called the Golgothian Silex, which later, as a result of using it, destroyed both he and his brother, as well as a lot of the plane, and also caused just a blast so big that they made a legendary spell about it called Urza's Ruinous Blast. And the casting of this spell is one of the most powerful spells ever cast. It later led to Urza becoming a planeswalker, the Meekstone and the Mightstone uniting, and lots of other things following up. But it was all because of this little cup that was found that was a Thran artifact. Many, many, many years later, Karn has his own Silex, and it remains to be seen exactly what it is going to be doing. But we do have Karn's Silex in the current set.
I don't get why is our most powerful monster blow up mechanic thingies some bowls? They're bolts.
I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell
I'm
you.
just saying, there's non-zero amount of stoner lore out there, and the greatest power in the Magic universe is a bolt. All right, great. Karn Silex is a hell of a Magic card, though. It is a 3-mana mythic, a legendary artifact that enters the battlefield tapped. Players can't pay life to cast spells or to activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. No Phyrexian mana, no fetch lands, no thank you. And for
No Force of Will.
That's right. And for X generic mana, tap, exile it, destroy each non-land permanent with mana value X or less, activate only as a sorcery. That is unreal for a colorless effect to have a pernicious deed stuck on it. Incredible.
Can't pay life to cast spells and activate abilities. This also is going to like ruin the Citadel decks.
Yes.
So that's an interesting one. I like that this is a unique card that plays very well with Karn and the set that Karn came out in again, even though it plays great with the older Karn that can get this out of your sideboard. And it is also kind of nice that this card is not stapled onto a creature that you'll want 4 of in all your decks, so it'll keep the price point a little bit more reasonable.
I mean, I think this thing's gonna be worth $1 million. It's currently 11, 12 and up, and it's not getting any cheaper because not only does it work great and constructed for Karn the Great Creator, but again, every commander deck until the end of time now has their own little tiny pernicious deed. It's slow, little clunky, but it's there. Solves everything.
Yeah. It's gonna see a ton of play in Vintage as well. Mishra's Workshop into Karn Silex turn 1 is a huge play in Vintage. Modern Tron is probably going to want to run this. They already run Karn and other Karn. And this is like a really good, board reset kind of thing. And being able to shut off fetch lands by itself is good enough, much less shutting off Force of Will, Phyrexian mana, etc.
I mean, in Vintage, turn 1, now you don't get to play your fetch lands, or you just get to look at them, and aren't they cool because they do nothing now? That's sweet. All right, cool. Let's move here to number 2. Ruben, what's number 2?
So we're at the point now where we're talking about cards that are going to do things in old formats, in every format, and this card's going to do things in every format. We've already talked about it a little bit in its context as being a 6/6 that can attack and block. In addition to that, it's also just a 1-mana flash O-ring. We are talking, of course, about Leyline Binding. Leyline Binding is 5 generic and a white for a rare enchantment with flash and domain. It costs 1 less for each basic land among land types you control. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Leyline Binding leaves the battlefield. It's 1 mana. It's a 1 mana Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, Chain to the Rocks. That's instant speed and at the low cost of having to play Triomes in your deck, basically.
Yeah, this card is really, really good. I was surprised to see as many O-ring effects as we have in the format, but there they are. And this one is one of the higher priced cards in the set.
Oh yeah, it's like I certainly I underestimated this card, and I underestimated another one we'll get to in a minute. But this card is just nuts, and when you play it for 1 mana, it's a hug from Jesus. You're literally answering anything on the board, anything, planeswalkers, enchantments, artifacts, anything that you care about that is messing with you. This can stop it, and if anything, you get into the weird mirrors of I binding your binding to bind your binding, and so on and so forth, because this card is going to be around for a minute and going to be a huge player until it gets out of standard.
I mean, I'm hoping that, well, first of all, I was hoping we'd get Tribal Flames. We did not get Tribal Flames in this set. We got Gaia's Might. So Gaia's Might get there for those of you that played Old Extended. And we might have a domain tribal something. I'd love it if we had something that was like a Wild Nacatl Curd Ape situation. We've got the Nishoba Brawler, but that's 2 mana. I would love it if the old domain zoo decks could make a comeback. That would make me very happy.
It would be nice. Nerd Girl, what's number 2?
My number 2 is we actually talked a little bit about this in the pre-show. This was one of the cards that completely caught me off guard on how strong it is due to like one teeny tiny misread, because that's typically the way these cards are structured. But we're going to go ahead and talk about Wing Mantle Chaplain. This is a 3 and a white for a human cleric defender. It's an 0/3 that says when it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying for each creature with defender you control. Whenever another creature with defender enters the battlefield under your control, get a +1/+1 white bird creature token. So for some reason, when I did the set review for this card, I only had it in my head that this is when you play a thing. So the first time someone cast it on me and they made 4 birds, I was just like, oh poop. And then I proceeded to die. And so, yeah, this card is insane. And also it gets brought out of the deck by one of the common defender cards that let you just basically search up all your win conditions, super cheap, super easy, and you have access to everything whenever you need it. So this is an insanely good mythic uncommon win condition.
In that its win rates are very, very, very high. And when you play against the defender deck, you're often just like, what is this jank? And then they make 6 birds and you lose. And you're like,
Yep.
oh.
Yeah, this is the best thing to go get with Shield Wall Sentinel.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it is a common that goes and gets an uncommon as opposed to another of the popular like go fetch a cards, which is Micromancer.
Mm-hmm.
To go get, whatever your best 1 mana instant is, either Tail Swipe or Rona's Vortex, makes it so that this is just so much more likely to draw. The argument that I saw on Twitter from @Sirkovitz is that this is similar in many ways to Mascot Exhibition, which is shocking to me because you've got like 5 or 6 ways to go get your Wingmantle Chaplain. The card's amazing. Being able to reanimate it, being able to bounce it and rebuy it and play it again, not to mention in multiples, is crazy.
Yeah, this card is value. And I enjoy, stuff like this when, again, it's very niche. Not everybody's playing defenders. You have to be a little lucky and or know that you're shooting your shot in the right way to get this to really work for you. And when it does, it's $1 million. And that's awesome. For my number 2, though, this is... one of the things you get to do when you're in a position like we are is you get to be wrong in front of a lot of people. And it's okay that you're wrong in front of a lot of people. And for what it's worth, after a while, I just started to enjoy it because, like, you know what? If you pay enough attention to me and you care about what I said and it gets, and you laugh about how silly and how wrong I was, that's awesome because I don't like being wishy-washy. I'd rather just stake a claim. Well, I stuck it wrong. Now, when I stick it right, I don't get a lot of attention, but when I stick it wrong, like when I said Sholdred was not that good, a man was wrong. Okay? The card is bananas and is very, very strong, and I was super blown away by how good it was in a whole bunch of different situations. Shoulder of the Apocalypse is fantastic. It is my number 2. It's 2 black, 2 generic mana for a 4/5 mythic legendary Phyrexian Praetor with Death Touch. It's your number 10, you said? Cool. So this 4 mana, 4/5 Death Touch, quote unquote, it's only good because of its rate. Whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. And this starts to put you in a 4 life swing every turn between you. And this pulls you back into the game if you're behind. This pulls them out of the game if they're losing. And it's just all around fantastic. And I'm happy to be wrong on this.
Yeah, I was sort of on the fence. I thought this card was going to be good, and then I had some people that I really trusted, this was before the Magic Mike's episode, say that this card was not going to make it in standard. And I kind of broke it down as to why I thought this was good, and my thought process was Siege Rhino-esque feeling of that mid-range deck. Mm-hmm. And I kind of decided that the mid-range decks have been quite unplayable. So I started to get on board with the idea that this card wasn't good. But I think the reason that it is so good right now is because we are just in the first set post-rotation. And that's when aggro and mid-range are going to have its day to shine. I think this will lose a lot of steam the further we get into the second half of our standard cycle.
Yeah, mid-range tends to be quite good in smaller standards. Mm-hmm. As you get more tools as you get more 1-drops and more tools, the aggro decks get better. As you get more control finishers and you can sort of see what the format's going to look like and you can sort of aim your scalpels, control gets better. So I agree with all of that. I will also say they did give us a bunch of tools for mono black control. And so Wizards has decided we're going to give mono black control another day in the sun. They gave us Liliana. They gave us the Raven Man to go with Liliana. They gave us a 4-drop to follow that up. Like I'm super pleased.
Yeah, they gave us mono black control as the best deck in standard for the first time since Return to Ravnica. And what was the rats you could copy? What are those things again?
Oh, Pack Rat?
Pack Rat, yeah. So ever since the days of Pack Rat, we have not seen, I don't think we've seen mono black. This was that after Theros or before Theros?
Well, Pack Rat was before Theros, but like Grey Merchant of Asphodel era.
That was the last one. Yeah. So since that era, we've not really had anything. Just straight up mono black has been great, and partially because of other cards we talked about, like Evolved Sleeper. This kind of helps it get there. And
I'm confused. Didn't we just have a mono black? Like Blood on the Snow, mono black.
Eye Twitch, you blocked it out of your memory, Evan. Although that was not like the best deck in the format. We did have it.
It was there.
Sure.
It wasn't the best.
Yeah, but it was okay.
We certainly still had it. Yeah, we definitely had Blood on the Snow, Eye Twitch, Mascot Exhibition, Lolth for sure.
Yeah, but as of this recording, September 5th, 2022, per the percentages on Untapped, mono black's the best deck, and I think that's awesome. All right, let's move in here to number 1, Nerd Girl. What's your number 1?
My number 1 is a pretty exciting card. I'm a huge fan of white creatures, and when you're swinging with white creatures, thankfully people might not be happy with it now because we've had mono white in standard for a very long time in the last few sets, but that's not historically always the case. So whenever we get a white card that I think is very good, I get very excited. So we're going to talk about Sarah Paragon. Ooh. 2 white for an angel, 3/4 with flying. This says during each of your turns, you may play a land from your graveyard or cast a permanent spell with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. If you do, it gains when this permanent is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, exile it, and you gain 2 life. So it's a Lurrus type ability that you can't recast over and over again, but it also gives you the benefit of you gain the extra life, but also it's on a creature that's a lot more threatening than Lurrus.
Yeah, this card was absolutely sweet. Now, this was a card that I thought was just going to be broken, absolutely busted, and Muldrotha, 2.0 or whatever. And it wasn't quite that. It is super duper good. It rebuys some incredible spells and or lands, which is great. So you can self mill a lot, which is sweet. So I like 4-mana angels that are awesome, and there's a bunch in this set.
I liken this card to Emeria Angel in that it's good on turn 4. It's better on turn 5. Because being able to rebuy that land and get immediate value is so valuable. The other thing that this has above Lurrus and above Emeria Angel, both of which were very powerful cards, is that it has 4 toughness. And we have a Lightning Strike format right now. And this thing survives Lightning Strike. It survives the Premier Black removal spell. It takes a little bit more work to try to kill this creature. Not only that, but it's a 3/4 flyer, and there's a bunch of 2/3 flyers in this set, a bunch of 3 toughness flyers in this set, and this thing tangles with all of them. I love this card.
Yeah, this is a very exciting, cool design. I love it a lot. I like that. I like the fact that I think you're seeing Wizards really lean into the fact that, memory issues have stopped being a thing that stops designs. I just can see this card being shot down 10, 15 years ago easily. Just saying, look, no one's going to remember all the different things you put into play with it and blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, we're talking about digital too these days, and no one cares. All right, Ruben, what's number 1?
You ready? You ready for some bull crap? My number 1 is all 10 of the new comes into play tap dual lands. I think that no mechanic, no cycle, nothing has a bigger effect on the limited format than the 10 comes into play tapped dual lands. I'm going to go with Wooded Ridgeline as the one that I'm naming and calling out specifically, which is a mountain forest that enters the battlefield tapped. These 10 common double typed lands are insanely powerful in a domain set. They make mana not trivial, but significantly better. And they make the format run in limited.
And they're like the greatest dual land proxies ever. You just Sharpie over there on the battlefield tap and you have yourself a dual land.
There you go. Perfect.
See? Perfect for you.
Yeah, I mean, these lands allow for a lot of like splashing and diversity in build. It doesn't feel like every single thing that we play are on tracks. The fact that we have access to all of them is a lot of flexibility for limited gameplay. It helps with domains, certainly. So this is a domain thing, but the splashing options are endless. And there are a lot more multicolor cards. All 10 of the color pairs are represented. So I like that this is going to give us a lot of replayability.
I mean, it has to be said, it is super weird that Streets of New Capenna was not a real, what didn't feel like a 3-color draft set. It was literally supposed to be a shard set or whatever, and it just didn't end up that way. And that's really strange. And maybe they sort of held the punch for this one. You know what I mean? Maybe they had the tap duels with the basic land types in that one. I don't know, but
and they saved it.
Yeah, because Domain is such a great
Capenna died for Dominaria's dual lands. That's possible.
I don't
because
know, man.
These are a home run. These are great.
So much better. And it's just it's a better 3-color format. It's a better 5-color format. Like, it's a whole better format because these have basic land types, and Domain is such a great payoff for all of this stuff. And it's such a low bar. Again, if you are playing 2 colors and you're playing black-red, get the black-green one, the Haunted Mire, let it be Enters the Battlefield Tap Swamp, and get a bonus randomly from your Domain spell. That is awesome. I think that's great. And so kudos to them for really going, you know, a lot of times we think about sort of what is left in dual land design, right? Like, they've continued the fast lands, the slow lands, the tap lands.
The pathways were a big, like, eye-opening moment to me of like, oh, they're not out of gas yet.
No, they really aren't. And that's incredible. So unless Nurgle, we've talked about your number 4 already.
No,
we have not. Through process of elimination, this is your number 4. This is the most surprising move, I think, of the set. This is the most surprising move in terms of taking something that is old and exciting and putting it in your most recent standard set, something that Wizards was specifically against, like specifically explained to me. And we don't do that. We don't put Pernicious Deed in Ravnica sets because that would take away from all the cool Golgari blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, yeah, but Pernicious Deed is sweet. And they just wouldn't give us these awesome old cards. Well, my God, they just took a giant wrecking ball, not only to standard, but also to Pioneer and Explorer and Modern. Liliana of the Veil is here. Oh my God. This card is nuts. This card is just so crazy powerful. This card is so sick and so powerful. You have to have a plan for it. No matter what you're playing in almost any format, at least right this second, you have to have a plan for Liliana across the table, because she's going to be there if you play in a format long enough. Liliana of the Veil originally came out in Innistrad, is a casual $40 plus. For 2 black and a generic mana, it is a 3 loyalty planeswalker. It has +1, each player discards a card, -2, target player sacrifices a creature, and -6, separate all permanents target player controls into 2 piles. That player sacrifices all permanents in the pile of their choice. And just to note, I also recognize if you're a newer player, you'll be like, what in the hell? This does not even sound that interesting. And it's just the incremental advantage of slowly taking your cards away, taking away your best threat. And if you don't get her under control, her ultimate will ruin your entire day. That's kind of where you are with Liliana.
Yeah, I think it's weird that Liliana was put in after the Innistrad set, which I've talked about before. I also think this is a strange place to put it because it is going to be outrageously powerful in the first set post rotation. This feels like a deeper into rotation thing that would maybe even transfer over, but be in a larger card pool, like in the second half, the cards that wouldn't rotate out. But what I feel like maybe, just maybe happened here is the cards in this set aren't very exciting.
The exciting points aren't.
Yeah, there is minimal exciting points in the set. I was looking at it, which like Shieldred $40, Liliana $40, and then like a Johnny 12, and then it just hit a huge cliff. So if Liliana isn't in this set, is this product worth opening? Like, kind of at all?
That's a good take. I like that.
That's a good point.
So I feel like maybe the set was designed. It was designed well, and we thought about it, and it was like, guys, we need a ticket. We need a little something. Here are a list of things that would be in the $50 price tag realm. What fits? What?
That's
will
a
not
good take.
break
I
our
like
format.
that. Huh. Liliana of the Dark. What was the other 3-mana
The
Liliana?
Dark Realms or no?
I think that was 4-mana.
The
That was
Last
the
Hope.
4-mana one.
Lost Hope.
Last Hope.
Last Hope.
Yeah, Last Hope doesn't work name-wise.
Right.
Liliana's
also-
Veil kind of also doesn't. But.
Wasn't Last Hope just printed in Double Masters?
Well,
that's a good point,
And
too.
she's not even of the Veil anymore, which is kind of hilarious.
Right. Here's my other Liliana of the Veil hot take is I don't think this card is very good anymore. Like it's a good card. It's not the best thing you can be doing, right? It's good in
I mean,
it was
she's
good
already
12 years ago.
She's already in first place lists all over again. Like I've seen her.
Sure. I mean,
in
I think
Pioneer,
that
in Explorer, like she's
yeah.
out there.
She's a very good card. I don't
Yeah.
think that she's with all of the things that modern Magic has to recoup card advantage.
Mhm.
Liliana's not as good when the goal is to run both players out of cards. Still very good and extremely potent when supported by the rest of the mono black stuff that is around her. We didn't even talk about things like Pilfer, which I think is also a little bit of a sleeper in the set. Just unconditional discard. You've got other mono black support. There's lots of great stuff. We talked about Cut Down. We talked about the sleeper.
Mhm.
I love the take that the set needed Liliana though from a value standpoint.
And that makes sense.
And I think that Liliana of the Veil is very exciting, not from a exciting standpoint, but from a comeback standpoint. Like this is a wonderful old school reprint that gives the nostalgia, even if it's not specifically Dominaria nostalgia.
And it does bring the dollars. And, you know, that's a very important point that Wizards thinks about. You know, absolutely. This is a company that has done nothing but break records over and over again. The prices for the set were going up 13% as of the release of Dominaria United, and that's huge. And so having a reason to open packs and people get excited is sweet. And again, this definitely got people excited.
Is this one of the first sets after the increase in price that started in July?
This is the first
Like,
set. They
so-
announced it in July. This
Yeah.
was the first set actually affected by the prices.
So
They needed it.
They
And,
did.
if they're going to live on the hill of we're not putting Jace into standard, they needed a Liliana kind of specifically.
And even with Liliana, I still think this is one of the least financially exciting sets that we've seen. If you go back to Kamigawa, you've got Fable, and even the lands are $30 a piece, like some of them, and they're just rare. You've got Fable the Mirrorbreaker, you have Wandering Emperor. It's very, very exciting. And then you have Capenna, which has a $25 rare bird in the 1/3 Ledger Shredder.
Oh, yeah,
It's
Ledger
got
Shredder.
unlicensed Hearst. All the triomes are, $10 to $15.
Mhm.
So there's just a lot of incidental value, where here our hot ticket, a Johnny, is less than a triome,
Yeah.
And like
So-
Paylands are cool. Don't get me wrong. Paylands
but they're
are
not worth
sweet,
anything.
But they're
They're
like
not worth
$3
anything.
to
You're exactly right.
$4 or something or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could use it, and it did need it, and I think it got it, and I think the set's better for it. So that said, that was our top 10 Dominaria United cards. You'll see them on the screen right now. If you're a review, take a look at my list, Nerd Girl's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win $50 worth of anything at CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Nerd Girl.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Ruben.
I am loving Dominaria United so far. I think that it is a really fun and interesting, difficult, challenging limited format with lots of ways to explore it. The flavor and the history and the gravitas are all there. I'm very pleased.
Yeah, I am super happy with this, and I think that for as high of a bar as Dominaria set, I think they did a good job with the second go around after. So, all right, we move on here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHoarder.com and AlterSleeves.com, my co-host, MTG Nerdigirl and Ruben Bressler, you guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.